Hi, welcome back to the basement. I'm Steve Lewis. Today we conclude our look at the third quarter of 1973 with movies, television, and the Beach Boys in the months of July, August, and September. As usual, there's quite a bit to get to. Let's get started right away with movies. As usual, the big blockbusters of the summer had mostly been released in the second quarter, but there were certainly some notable film releases in the third quarter of 1973. Beginning with, on July 25th, the premiere of The Macintosh Man, an espionage drama starring Paul Newman. Opening in wide release on July 30th was the thriller The Day of the Jackal. Opening in wide release on August 11th was American Graffiti, directed by newcomer George Lucas. Though technically set in 1962, it perfectly tapped into the rising wave of nostalgia for the 1950s. It had an excellent ensemble cast led by Ronnie Howard, Richard Dreyfuss, and Charles Martin Smith. I happened to watch it again recently and was really impressed with Mackenzie Phillips as the young teenager Carol. I thought her acting was really realistic and unself-conscious. Candy Clark will get a Best Supporting Actress nomination at the Academy Awards for her role in the film. Having watched it again recently, I really think Mackenzie Phillips should have been nominated too. In any case, it will be a surprise hit and become one of the biggest films of the year. On August 15th came the film version of Jesus Christ Superstar. It was a surreal, deliberately anachronistic film of the hit musical. Though the musical was a huge hit only a few years earlier, times are changing so fast that it already feels strangely dated in 1973. Released on August 19th was Enter the Dragon. The film's star, Bruce Lee, had died unexpectedly in Hong Kong on July 20th. As discussed earlier, two other Hong Kong-produced films starring Lee had already been major box office successes when they were released in the US earlier in the year. Enter the Dragon, which was completed shortly before his death, was expected to launch Bruce Lee as a major film star in the US. The movie, which co-stars John Saxon and Jim Kelly, will be the biggest and generally considered the best of the 70s wave of martial arts movies. It'll reach number 1 at the box office on August 29th, 10 days after its release, and stay there for 2 weeks. It'll be hugely profitable too, reportedly grossing around $400 million in the US against a budget of $850,000. Premiering in Detroit in August was Detroit 9000, a low-budget crime drama that will do extremely well at the box office. And going into wide release in August was American International Pictures' Dillinger, with Warren Oates in the title role. Music fans, and I suppose that includes pretty much everybody watching this channel, might notice former Mamas and Papas member Michelle Phillips is one of the film's stars. I happened to catch this on TV recently, and it was a lot better than I would have expected. Warren Oates particularly was outstanding. It'll be number 1 at the box office the week of September 26th. Turning to television in the summer of 1973, on Monday, July 2nd, Match Game 73 debuts on CBS, or as it was described in the opening, the star-studded big money Match Game 73! With its freewheeling comedy style due in part to some of the cast sometimes appearing to be intoxicated, it'll quickly become a ratings winner. Match Game will become the number 1 rated daytime show for 1973, 1974, and 1975, and the top rated game show for 1976 and 1977. As always, the networks began rolling out their new television schedules in September. There had been a television writers' strike earlier in the year, which had thrown off production schedules and resulted in the new shows being rolled out over a period of weeks in the fall of 1973 instead of all in one big premiere week as was usually the case. That may have contributed to the unusually high number of new shows that failed to catch on. There were a few new hit shows, but the most notable thing about the new 1973 TV season was the number of highly touted new shows that flopped. On September 10th, a new show kicking off NBC's Monday night lineup was the much-hyped new blue-collar sitcom Lotsa Luck, starring Dom DeLuise as a lost and found clerk for a New York City bus company. It was promoted as the next big sitcom, even the next All in the Family. In the end, it'll fail to attract an audience and will limp along until it's pulled from the schedule in May 1974. Following Lotsa Luck that night came the premiere of another sitcom for which NBC had high hopes. Diana, starring former Avengers star Diana Rigg as a recently divorced woman living in New York. This one was hoped to be the next Mary Tyler Moore show. It will also fail to find an audience and won't even last as long as Lotsa Luck, with its final episode airing in January 1974. On Thursday, September 14th, came the premiere of The Girl with Something Extra on NBC. It was a kind of throwback to 60s series like Bewitched, with Sally Field, formerly of Gidget and The Flying Nun, as a newlywed with ESP, and John Davidson as her husband. It'll be another miss for NBC this year, lasting only until May 1974. On Sunday, September 16th, CBS came up with a big miss with The New Perry Mason. It starred Monty Markham in the role made famous by Raymond Burr for 9 seasons between 1957 and 1966. Apart from anything else, for most people, Raymond Burr was Perry Mason, and it was pretty hard to accept anyone else in the role. It'll be pulled in January 1974. On Tuesday, September 25th, came the new Temperatures Rising show. ABC's new sitcom from last year, Temperatures Rising, had been reworked, losing all of the original cast except for Cleavon Little, and adding an all-new cast headed by Paul Lynde as hospital administrator, Dr. Paul Mercy. The cast change won't seem to help, and the new Temperatures Rising will be pulled from ABC's schedule in January 1974. On Tuesday, October 2nd, Bill Bixby, former star of sitcoms My Favorite Martian and The Courtship of Eddie's Father, returned in a new drama series on NBC, The Magician. Bixby played wealthy nightclub magician Anthony Blake, who uses his skills to solve crimes in his spare time. And of course, nightclub magicians are generally known for their fabulous wealth. This was another series that NBC had high hopes for, and another one that will only last 1 season. Over on CBS at 9:30, following a strong lead-in from highly rated series Maude and Hawaii Five-0, came 2 dramas that were supposed to alternate every other week in the style of the Sunday Mystery Movie over on NBC. The first of these, Hawkins, premiered on October 2nd, featuring film star James Stewart as a country lawyer who investigates crimes. The next week, October 9th, came the premiere of Shaft, with Richard Roundtree reprising the private eye role he had originated in the movie and its 2 sequels. Both shows got good reviews and were expected to be hits. I think it's likely that these shows drew 2 different audiences in 1973, and alternating every other week must have made it hard for either one to find an audience. Both shows will last only 1 season. Opposite Hawkins, or Shaft, on NBC at 10 p.m. was another new crime show, the anthology series Police Story. It was created by novelist and former police officer Joseph Wambaugh, who tried to make sure that the series was more realistic than most TV police dramas. This one will be a hit, running until 1977. On Thursday, October 4th, came Toma on ABC, starring Tony Musante in a series based on real-life detective David Toma, who specialized in using disguises in his investigations. It'll run for 1 season. Other new shows that flopped included Colucci's Department and Roll Out on CBS, Griff, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice and Adam's Rib on ABC, and Chase, Love Story, the NBC Follies, and Needles and Pins on NBC. 2 latecomers to the fall schedule didn't arrive until late October. On Saturday, October 20th, The $6 Million Man premiered on ABC, starring Lee Majors as astronaut Steve Austin, a man barely alive after a catastrophic accident. The government rebuilds him, better, stronger, faster, using bionics. His bionic arm gave him super strength. His 2 bionic legs allowed him to run at 60 miles per hour, and his bionic eye gave him 20-to-1 zoom and infrared vision, despite apparently going do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do whenever he tried to use it. And on Wednesday, October 24th, another gritty crime drama premiered on CBS, Telly Savalas as Kojak. Along with the $6 Million Man in Police story, Kojak will be one of the very few hits of fall 1973. It'll end the 73-74 season as the 11th highest rated program and will run until 1978. NBC's Midnight Special had been doing surprisingly well in the ratings since its debut in February, proving to the network that there were enough people awake and wanting to watch TV at 1 a.m. that programming in the early morning hours could be viable. On October 15th, NBC launched The Tomorrow Show, a talk show from New York hosted by LA newsman Tom Schneider in a 1 a.m. to 2 a.m. slot following The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson Monday through Thursday. Of course, Saturday mornings were still the domain of kids programming, and there were plenty of new kid shows in the fall of 1973. On ABC, Multiplication Rock, which had been introduced in January, had proven so successful that it was now expanded into Schoolhouse Rock with more educational songs, this time adding grammar rock about the parts of speech, including a noun is a person, place, or thing, and conjunction junction. New on ABC was The Super Friends, the adventures of the Justice League, which consisted of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman, plus teenagers Wendy and Marvin and their pet, Wonder Dog. On NBC, there was Emergency Plus 4. Gage and DeSoto from the Saturday primetime series Emergency appeared in animated form on Saturday mornings, where they were joined by 4 kids to fight fires and perform rescues. With both these shows, I get the feeling that someone thought the important ingredient was to put relatable kids into the action. Also new on NBC was Sigmund and the Sea Monsters, a live-action series featuring another bunch of weird psychedelic characters from Sid and Marty Krofft, who had already brought us H.R. Pufnstuf and Lidsville over the last several seasons. It featured former Family Affairs star Johnny Whitaker, with Billy Barty in the sea monster costume as Sigmund. It was one of only 2 live-action Saturday morning kid shows in '73, the other being Sid and Marty Krofft's returning Lidsville. Also on NBC was Star Trek, an animated version of the series notable for featuring the voices of all the main cast from the original series. Along with Emergency Plus 4, Star Trek was part of a trend toward creating animated shows for Saturday morning based on live-action shows that kids would already know from primetime or from syndicated reruns. Also premiering in the fall were cartoon versions of Genie, based on I Dream of Jeannie, My Favorite Martians, The Addams Family, and Lassie's Rescue Rangers, along with the returning Brady Kids. And if you were a kid in 1973, you might have been watching those shows while sorting through your collection of wacky packages. Wacky packs were a hot new fad among kids. For a nickel, you'd get 2 quasi-Mad Magazine-style stickers with parodies of well-known commercial products, a checklist, and a stick of bubble gum with roughly the consistency of a credit card that broke into jagged shards if you tried to bite into it. 5 different series were released in 1973. Series 1 included my all-time favorite, Crust. Brush teeth twice a month. Crust toothpaste. Tastes lousy. Garlic flavor. And finally, what were the Beach Boys up to in the summer of 1973? As you might guess, most of them were touring. After a break which began in late May, they resumed with a North American tour on August 9th, which ran until September 9th. Many of the shows were recorded to give them additional tracks to choose from for the still-planned live album. By this point, it was pretty obvious, at least within the Beach Boys, that there's not going to be an album of new material anytime soon. Apart from recording Sail on Sailor in November, they haven't done much in the way of recording since sessions in Holland a year earlier. Al has written a song called Dr. Tom based on Tom Dooley, recorded by the Kingston Trio, and a commercial jingle called Canyon Summer for Coppertone Suntan Oil, which is rejected. Carl has spent some time in the studio, but nothing much seems to have come from it. Brian wrote at least one song, Just an Imitation, as a tribute to his late father. According to I Am Brian Wilson, Brian says it was recorded at the Caribou Sessions in 1974. It remains unreleased and, as far as I know, unheard outside a very small circle of people. Late in 1973, Brian will drop in on one of Carl's sessions and record a version of a very simple song he's had laying around for a couple of years, Ding Dang. With all their ups and downs over the years, the Beach Boys are entering an unprecedented period of inertia as a recording unit, and Brian's deteriorating situation is certainly a contributing factor. I think manager Jack Riley's decision to remain in Holland when the group returned to California played a part too. He'd been spurring them on to make modern progressive music, often collaborating on lyrics and helping provide a sense of direction. Popular music was also changing again. The hippie era had passed and we were getting into glam rock, and harder lyrics. The kind of ecology-minded songs that the group seemed at least semi-comfortable with were becoming passé. They'd only barely reinvented themselves for the early 70s, and now already it looked like they'd have to reinvent themselves again. It was hard to see them taking a walk on the wild side with Lou Reed, David Bowie, Alice Cooper and company, but the times seemed to necessitate some kind of a change. In any case, I'm sure the battle to stay relevant in the face of audience members shouting out requests for oldies must have been dispiriting and depressing. Which brings us to another factor. The group was on the road for large chunks of the year. They had a great live show at this point, but I'm sure the near constant touring left little time or energy for developing new material. They seem to have decided very early in the year that their next album would be a live album. Of course, it made sense to help get the word out about how great they were in concert. It was also undoubtedly a useful stopgap for a band with no new direction or new material. That's where we'll leave the summer of 1973. Hope you enjoyed this. I look forward to your comments. Please let me know particularly your take on the Beach Boys during this period. If you have a different view, I'd love to hear it. Please hit like if you don't mind, subscribe if you haven't. I hope you will join us next time when we will begin a two-part wrap-up looking at the last 3 months of 1973. Till then, have a great week. Thanks very much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Bye.